Hey, howdy ho, everybody. This is Postmortem Nightshade, and welcome back to the Ghastly Ghost Birds channel. As I said, it's Postmortem Nightshade here, one half of the wonderful, charming Ghastly Ghost Birds, and joining me this evening is.
Saladro! How's it going?
Woohoo! 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 Welcome back, everybody. As always, it is so great to be back for another week discussing movies with y'all. As some of you may be aware, some of you may not. You may be new to the channel, but we are currently in a run of videos talking about the various phases of Marvel leading up to Avengers Doomsday coming out in December. So, Slothro, would you like to explain what phase of Marvel we find ourselves in?
So, we currently find ourselves in Phase 3. So, we went over Phase 1 and Phase 2, which were the building blocks for this phase right here. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I personally think this phase right here is probably the magnum opus of all of the Marvel phases. This is where all of the big stuff happens, and this is probably where you get all of the meat and potatoes that you're searching for when it comes to watching these superhero movies. You've got some of the ones that tie and close off storylines that you watched in the prior two, and then you have ones that kind of lead into a little bit of what the next phase could be. But this one definitely for sure has some very heavy hitters when it comes to movies. So
Awesome. Yeah, I do agree. I think that if you are wondering what the heck, I'm not really sure why Marvel was such a big deal. You know, if you weren't growing up or very interested in superhero movies at that time, it would be very difficult to understand why people would commit so much time to have to watch so many movies. But these films really have, well, not only are there a bunch in this phase that stand really well as movies just by themselves, but like Sathro said, we're getting to the real fireworks show, the big bang at the end here that everybody was really excited about. So I can't wait to chat about this phase. There's a lot of movies. I believe there's about 11 in this phase, Slothro was telling me. So we've
yes,
got a lot to dig into.
all right. So and we're starting off with actually a really crazy one. I remember when this movie came out, I think I was in middle school or high school, and this movie was talked about a lot. We were starting off with Captain America: Civil War from 2016. This movie this movie I swear was probably one of the biggest sparks of like Marvel debate outside of like the first Avengers movie. So many people talked about the story beats of this movie, and whether you liked them or not, it had a very big influence on the media at the time. And it was very fun to watch. I personally really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was very interesting. You get to see characters, of course, from the Captain America movies pop up again, but you also kind of get almost the whole cast of the Avengers in a way kind of showing up in this movie. So it's almost like its own Avengers movie in a way. But I really, really, really enjoyed this movie overall. The story, the characters, the fight scenes especially are really fun. But yeah, what did you enjoy most about this movie?
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed the community, like you mentioned. This was a big cultural moment, and these were when the movies really started to pick up steam. I won't speak for Slothro here, but I've mentioned this in our last video. I would say there are a lot bigger Marvel fans out there than me. I would say I am a huge DC fan and can get really into the nitty gritty of that lore. But I would say I'm a pretty casual Marvel fan. But I definitely became really into all of these movies kind of around the time that Captain America Civil War came out because everybody was talking about it. It was a huge deal. It was very much like Twilight of pick your team kind of thing. Were you Captain America side? Were you Iron Man side? And just seeing how the Avengers got divvied up between those two teams was really fascinating. And like Sothro said, I think it's kind of insane that they call this a Captain America movie. It's definitely not Captain America. It's really an Avengers movie, but it's great. I think, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I'm pretty sure this was our introduction to Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and he was great. He was super funny and charming, and so they definitely knocked that out of the park. So yeah, I had a really great time with this movie.
I believe you're right. I think this was the introduction to the Spider-Man, and he was very funny and seemed to fit the role quite well, especially in this universe. So, I don't know if you can show it, but I enjoyed the Tony Stank meme in this movie. Probably one of
Yes,
my
that's a
favorite
good one.
parts. Probably one of my favorite parts. Unfortunately, it's at the very end of the movie, but I would definitely say it's one of my top highlight moments or top quotes in this whole Marvel franchise. But overall, this movie was very well received. It got people invested. Anyone who was kind of on the fence really kind of jumped on when this movie came out. And then the lead up to this one was actually a pretty interesting one as well that we hadn't seen kind of pop out, which is Doctor Strange from 2016 as well. This movie, I really enjoyed this movie. It's kind of a quirky story, and there's definitely some interesting story bits to it, especially when it comes to like the main villain and getting to see Dormammu at the end with Doctor Strange. But I definitely say throughout this movie, you get a lot of very interesting character build up, and I think Benedict Cumberbatch does a really, really good job when it comes to playing Doctor Strange and portraying almost kind of like, I don't know, kind of like that doctor vibe that you kind of hear about and see in the comics of Doctor Strange.
Yeah, no, and I just want to give a disclaimer here before we keep going. As always, our videos have spoilers, so big spoiler alert warning here. We will be giving, endings, twists, turns of this phase. So if you're not into the Marvels yet or the Marvel movies and you want to not be spoiled, click off now. But yeah, I was just I was thinking about this with Doctor Strange. If you didn't watch our last video, I am not a fan of Iron Man. I know, we got lots of tomatoes. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of Iron Man. I think Civil War really cemented that for me. And so I wasn't really sure how I would feel about the character of Doctor Strange because I know that they're somewhat similar. But I thought that what they did with him in this movie, he has a very strong, how do I put this? Like arrogant hero who gets like beaten down. It happens in the first like 20 minutes that he has his accident, damages his hands. He can no longer be a surgeon. He's a very good surgeon, but he cannot practice any longer. And so he goes on this journey. And I don't know. I just found that really, really compelling. I found that very interesting. He does still keep the arrogance that we see from Tony Stark's character, especially in later movies. But I really thought that they did a really solid job with the, I guess, like redemption arc of the Doctor Strange character of Stephen. Yeah, I thought it was really good. I love the mind bendiness of this movie. I think the visuals were super cool.
Yes,
when they're in the mirror world is great.
Yeah, that is probably one of my favorite parts. Like the whole city scene where they're like warping buildings, like it's like Jello. I would definitely agree. The visuals for me are probably my favorite part of this movie. You also get a lot of really funny memes from this, and I see where you're coming from with him and Tony Stark being very similar. And I do agree with you that I feel more of a redemption coming from him, from Doctor Strange, to where it kind of feels like, I don't know. I guess he's Doctor Strange, but if anybody in the comments have seen the BBC show Sherlock Holmes, the characters that Benedict portrays are very similar to each other in some ways. And so I feel like, at least for Doctor Strange, I think he does a very good job of kind of having that blend of being like a confident doctor, but also knowing when to take like the hits necessarily, kind of like the humble hits. And I think he does a good job with that in this movie.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I feel like, especially putting these two against each other with Civil War and Doctor Strange, I feel like in Civil War, I really struggled. I feel like Tony Stark didn't take a whole lot of accountability for what had happened. And I feel like he continued to do that. And I feel like he kind of finally gets his redemption in Endgame. Spoiler alert. I feel like Tony Stark finally earned that redemption arc of like finally like taking full accountability and everything. And I know that might be a hot take. Feel free to let me know your thoughts about Iron Man versus Doctor Strange. But I agree with Slothro. I think that accountability or that willingness to kind of take the hit is a little bit more present in Doctor Strange's character, which I think gives them enough of the distinction to actually exist in Marvel together at the same time.
Yeah, very much so. This next movie, I haven't really had the chance to watch the whole thing through, so I think you'll have to speak a little bit more on this movie. But the next one is, we're going into the 2017 year, which is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is the first movie in Marvel that came out. The Guardians of the Galaxy movie, as we discussed in our last video, it was a very, very fun movie. And I heard nothing but good things about the second one. I heard that there were some interesting quirks to it and some very sad moments. But I have heard all of the Mary Poppins memes, and I've heard that this movie was a very fun watch overall, especially with Drax, and I think her name is Mantis, I think?
Yeah, Mantis.
Is her character? Yes, okay. But yeah, what were your thoughts overall on this movie?
Yeah, I seen Guardians Volume 2. I liked it. I liked that we got... I do remember his name, so I would say that gives him some credit. Ego, we find out, is Star-Lord's father. He's some sort of planet-ruling amalgamation type god thing, and he's trying to find the perfect heir. Ergo, he has Star-Lord, and he thinks that he will be the perfect protege. And so I remember him as a villain. I don't think he is a particularly favorable villain. Like, I wouldn't say, oh yeah, I love him so much, but he's memorable enough. You get some more of the dynamics between the group. Like Slothro said, they add Mantis, who has these more psychic powers to kind of round out the abilities of the group. See a lot more of Baby Groot after he unfortunately was exploded at the end of the first Guardians movie. I wouldn't say this one is as strong, for sure. I think this suffers a little from sequelitis, where it's good. It's not a bad movie. But the first Guardians is so endearing and so memorable that I think some fans were kind of let down by this. I just thought it was fine. But I was interested to see how they would tie that into the greater Marvel universe overall. And they definitely do that by Endgame. So yeah, I think it's a fine enough sequel.
Yeah, definitely. The next movie we have coming up is the first Spider-Man movie, actually, of these whole what would you say, Marvel phases, or this whole run thing. Instead of like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, it is Spider-Man: Homecoming in 2017. This movie, I really honestly enjoyed it. I never grew up watching the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans. I've watched clips of them and I think they look really fun, and I definitely go back and watch them at some time. But kind of not knowing much about Spider-Man and then getting this movie, for someone who didn't really grow up with Spider-Man necessarily, or kind of that wasn't really what I was more into Star Wars as a kid. So I wasn't really into Marvel as much growing up. But this was definitely a very, very good introduction to Spider-Man, especially with the Vulture villain. I thought he was handled very, very well. And I thought it was kind of cool, the dynamics it had with his girlfriend in high school, leading up to the end, kind of having to deal with some interesting trauma and kind of working up to being the hero that Spider-Man is. I think it's very, very well portrayed in this movie.
Yeah, I think that this is a good Spider-Man movie. I had seen a couple of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans before this, so I had a little bit of nostalgia for those, and going in, I was excited because like I said, I liked the introduction of Tom Holland's Spider-Man in Captain America Civil War. And I thought the Zendaya was in great casting, and I thought she did a really great job in her role. I think my biggest disappointment with Homecoming, and I have heard this a little bit more as time has passed since this movie came out, this movie did not feel wholly like a Spider-Man movie. Spider-Man from the comics that I knew, and from like I said, the Tobey Maguire versions, I knew Spider-Man to be the main central character of his own movie. That was the appealing part, right? He was smart enough and strong enough and brave enough to stand on his own and solve the problems of Queens and New York. And it was kind of hard to feel like a little bit like Iron Man kind of took over the movie, or that it was kind of a joint film for Spider-Man's first solo movie. So that wasn't really my favorite. And it wasn't just because I dislike Iron Man. It was really just because I was wanting to see how Tom Holland did in his own standalone movie. So I thought it was good. But yeah, I definitely liked the Spider-Man movies more that came after this one, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. It's not like my favorite of the ones that came out, but I think for an introduction, I think it did an all right job. It definitely got him into the universe, and at least kind of got him rearranged with some of, I guess, the characters. The next one, which is the last of 2017, which is actually probably my favorite Thor movie, actually, is Thor Ragnarok. Now, the reason why I liked this movie probably so much was not only you get to see more, of course, of Thor and Loki's interactions, and the Hulk as well in this movie, but I really enjoyed the vibe of this movie. It kind of gives you similar vibes to Guardians of the Galaxy with like that 80s retro theme, but at the same time, it doesn't really fully ride on that. It kind of rides on its own thing, so kind of going more the mythological route. And I think they did a very good job with that in this movie. What did you think overall of the vibes of this movie?
Yeah, so Taika Waititi is the director for this film, and this was such a smash hit, I would say, when it came out. I remember people talking a lot about this in high school. It leaned really heavy into the comedy that kind of Marvel had been exploring up until this point. And I think it was just the perfect timing of people wanting a little bit more of that comedy, a blend with Taika Waititi's style. It's very colorful and really fun to look at. The comedy is really enjoyable. We bring back Loki in this movie, and you see Thor actually come head to head with a villain who he struggles to defeat, his own sister. And the loss of Asgard at the end of this movie hit so hard. Yeah, it was interesting. This movie had weight. It had behind all of the comedy that I think people really enjoyed, there was an ending that was a big ripple throughout the Marvel universe. Like, what do you do after Thor's home is destroyed and all those people are displaced? Just like, it had a lot of hit behind all of the comedy and the color. But yeah, I thought this was a really, really great Thor movie, and it was one of my favorite Marvel movies actually for a long time. So yeah, definitely a fan of Thor Ragnarok. I thought it definitely just took all the best parts of Marvel and put them into one film.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think for me, possibly before Infinity War and Endgame, this was probably my favorite Marvel movie to watch. At least for a long time was this one. If I ever went back and like was like, what what Marvel movie do I want to watch? The next one goes into 2018, and this year was pretty packed because this is the beginning of the end of this phase is this year. So the first movie that came out is Black Panther in 2018, and this movie did really, really well. The music, the visuals, the character interactions, you didn't really get much of Black Panther up to this point. You got him in Captain America Civil War, but other than that, you didn't really see him up until now with his own movie. And I think they do a very good job of like getting to see the cool, unique technologies of Wakanda, getting to see his interactions with his siblings or his family. I guess for me, I really enjoyed kind of watching the dynamic between the main character and the villain. I thought it was very well set up. I thought it was really cool kind of getting this traditional vibe. It kind of reminded me of a lot of different video games I've played. It almost kind of gave me God of War vibes at times in this movie. And I would definitely say overall, by the end of the movie, I really, really enjoyed Black Panther. I didn't know what to expect going into it because I had not known much about him except for what he did in Civil War. But after watching Black Panther, I can definitely say that it was a movie I really, really did enjoy in this phase.
Yeah, I know that you and I are both huge fans of Ryan Coogler. If you guys didn't know, his movie Sinners is up for Best Picture this year at the Oscars. Very exciting. I adored that film. It was one of my favorites of last year. I know it was one of Slothrow's too. We actually talked about that in a previous video, but I think this movie helped put Ryan Coogler on a map. Oh my goodness, helped put Ryan Coogler on the map. It's incredible. Black Panther. Talking about favorites of Marvel, like there are so many. Like I mentioned, I loved Thor Ragnarok. Black Panther is also up there as just one of my all-time favorites. It's so good. Chadwick Boseman was incredible as T'Challa. May he rest in peace. We miss him very much. But he did such a phenomenal job bringing that character to life. And I talked earlier about Spider-Man and how I was disappointed that he wasn't given the chance to be the full center of his own standout movie. And that absolutely was not the case with Black Panther. I think that they gave that character the chance to come be his own standalone movie and really shine and really knock it out of the park. And like Slothrow mentioned, Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan of Sinners, did a phenomenal job. And I think this movie introduced some heavy, still very important political topics and philosophical topics and how different people approach solving those problems. And I think easily Killmonger is one of, if not the most compelling villain in the Marvel universe besides Thanos. I think he's just... Michael B. Jordan's performance is magnetic. He just lights up the screen every time he's on, and the passion that he brought to the role is so amazing, and him and Chadwick Boseman just playing across from each other. It was just a magnetic film. It was great. The visuals were beautiful. I just really love this movie, and Ryan Coogler has just blown me away time and time again, so I cannot wait to see what his next project is. But yeah, Black Panther was amazing. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Which... we went right off of the awesome train and kept it on going because we move into Avengers Infinity War. Holy cannoli. This was a huge moment. What were your thoughts when we were living through this, Slothrow?
For me, I didn't think much about it. I just kind of heard it was a really big deal. And then watching movies up to this point, I was very intrigued to see where this would go. I think this is when I heard that it would be a 2-part almost ordeal, and this was the first part. And so watching Infinity War, I was super hyped by the time I was like halfway through the movie. There's something, I guess, at this time where I had a really easy time immersing myself in films. And this film easily was one of those ones at the time to where I got engrossed in it. Like the moment it came on in theaters, I was on the edge of my seat, not knowing what was going to happen. Seeing Thanos pop up for the first time, watching all the battles show up, watching Captain America rejoin to try to help take them down Bucky and the Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor and everyone showing up to fight against Thanos' army. I thought it was really, really cool and very well done. I think I really liked Captain America's vibe in this movie too. I thought he did a good job. I liked seeing all of them come together again, almost like in like the prior Avengers movies, but in a different sense because it has a lot more of the people that you've seen in other movies tied in, and I feel like it does such a great job. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor coming into this universe, interacting with Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, like all of these different characters that didn't have much chance to interact with in other movies all get the chance to in this one film. And I think overall with Thanos going around getting the Infinity Stones, it definitely keeps you on the edge of your toes, especially by the end of the movie. And it really leaves you on a crazy cliffhanger to where you're wondering what on earth is going to happen in the next movie. Is there going to be any ramification or any fixes or any, like, what's going to happen? And this film did a very good job of keeping people interested and excited for when eventually Avengers Endgame would come out.
Yeah, I remember I saw this movie 3 or 4 times in the theater. Oh man, I was on the hype train and it did not disappoint at all. Slothro, what were you thinking? I remember just feeling kind of overwhelmed with Thanos' power at the beginning, being able to take on the Hulk. What were your thoughts on that?
It definitely kind of like freaked me out initially because the Hulk up to this point has dealt with pretty big beings, and so for Thanos to just kind of like flick him to the side, I was kind of like, and like Thor didn't stand a chance, and I remember now thinking about it that's when Loki ended up dying in this series. Spoiler, of course, like we said at the beginning. He dies in this movie, and so there's a lot of really big like moments that happen like throughout the entirety of this movie. It's just beat after beat after beat, and it keeps you constantly engrossed of like, oh my goodness, Loki died. Who else could possibly die? I remember it was kind of crazy as well. Like just after that, you get to see Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man all kind of jump on the front lines in. I don't remember what city it's in. I don't know if it was New York or not, but that's when all of Thanos' henchmen show up. And so it's just big situation after big situation throughout this whole movie, and it keeps you very engaged the entire time, especially like hitting off the beginning with just absolute like destruction. A lot of Asgard has been destroyed in terms of like the people, and Thor, who's usually one of the strongest, and the Hulk, also one of the strongest, is just, they're no match for Thanos and the rest of his goons. So it definitely keeps you anticipating what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and there is this beautiful love story going on between Wanda and Vision. I really liked them as a couple. I thought it was really cute. And there's a lot of side plots, Wanda and Vision being one of them, as Thanos wants the Infinity Stone that allows Vision to, be a corporeal being. And so, in addition to that, there's a bunch of other plots that are all coming together at the end to connect when they do initially try to take on Thanos and his army to prevent him from getting the Infinity Stones. And normally in a lot of other movies, when there's too many, I'm thinking of Last Jedi was an example where there was a lot of side plots going on, and the end didn't really connect. But I don't know what, I mean, it's just phenomenal what was able to happen, how all of those story beats were able to connect at the end of Avengers Infinity War, and it all felt like it fit together so well. Like Slothro said, nobody was off the table in this movie. I mean, Vision just getting the stone ripped out of his head, and, after they thought they had gotten it away from Thanos, and Wanda has made this huge sacrifice, and then of course the devastating loss of Spider-Man. And one moment where I actually was able to connect with the Iron Man character was as he loses Peter Parker and there's nothing he can do, and Robert Downey Jr. played that scene just so moving, so incredible. And just watching even a kid like Peter Parker get taken in this crusade that Thanos had, there was no holds barred in these movies, and I could hear a pin drop at the end the first time we went and saw it opening weekend. Not enough good things. This was a phenomenal movie, totally worth I think it was 10 years of buildup we had at that point. Incredible. And coming off of that, I think is like so difficult. But then we moved into Ant-Man and the Wasp, which, how did you feel about the sequel?
This is such a nothing burger, dude. I hate this movie. Okay, I shouldn't say I hate this movie. This movie, after such an absolute banger that is Infinity War, kind of falling into this afterwards was definitely like that gif where the whole audience is just slapping their foreheads. At least in my mind. So this movie, it kind of goes. So you don't have Yellow Jacket in this movie, and it takes place. I forgot what the. Do you remember the villain's name? The girl. I forgot her name.
Ghost? I believe
I think
it's Ghost. I can double check on that while you continue your thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, so Ghost. So it's about Ant-Man and his, I don't think it's his wife at this point, girlfriend, wife, is also the Wasp, and they kind of team up as a duo to take on Ghost and all of the threat that they pose to, I can't remember in the movie what they were what they were trying to do at the time. I just remember that big stuff happens. Ant-Man and the Wasp are in to try to stop her. I think the powers of Ghost are pretty cool, and I think the Wasp and Ant-Man look really cool. The story, the character dynamics, just all of this, I think it just falls so flat with the story that you come up from such a high with Avengers Infinity War into this, and it's an absolute, it's an absolute, like, meh movie. There's just not a whole lot to it. I feel like the dad of Wasp kind of, he just, after the first movie, his character just goes downhill. And this was the first, like, really big hit of, like, he just doesn't do very much. And I feel kind of bad that he's not only, he was a side character before, but he gets really, really sidelined in this movie. And so it just, I don't know. I wasn't the biggest fan of this movie overall. I just think it left a lot to be desired, especially with such a unique premise of Ant-Man and being able to team up with the Wasp after dealing with Yellow Jacket. I just think it was just a bad combination of stuff, especially after Infinity War.
Yeah, I agree. And the villain's name is Ghost. I double checked on that. I think that it is so telling that Slothro and I can barely recall most of the plot of what happens in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I mean, Infinity War, like Slothro said, was just, I mean, it was incredible. I loved it. You know, I was so entertained. I had the best time. And then I too was let down. I really, as I mentioned before, I loved the first Ant-Man. I was so excited to see what they would do with this sequel, especially with the introduction of the Wasp. She's huge in the comics. I just couldn't wait to see what they had in store. And then the plot was just, I was like, what happened there? I just felt like it was not very strong way to come off after having Avengers Infinity War come out. So I agree with Slothro. This was not a very strong film. I don't remember it. I don't even remember it being nearly as funny as the first. And yeah, Ghost was a villain that they still, I think, struggled to know even how to use her in the MCU now. So yeah, definitely not a huge fan. This is definitely one of the worst Marvel sequels, in my opinion.
And kind of, actually, it brought to mind, thinking of a character that's even similar to the Wasp that's in DC. I forgot what her name was. Do you remember the B girl? Was her name Yellow Jacket in Young Justice, the TV show? It's in the later seasons. I can't remember her name, but she was a very intriguing character, and she does a lot of similar stuff to the Wasp in this movie. But I think it was handled way better on the DC side of things with that character than with the Wasp in this movie.
It's Bumblebee.
Bumblebee, okay. Yeah, Bumblebee character in DC, I really enjoyed her character in DC. And so it was kind of a letdown to see how Wasp was handled in Marvel side of things, because I feel like in terms of, like, their powers and abilities, they're very similar, but they were just not handled very well in this movie overall.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you have almost direct comparison with DC, it's hard not to feel a little disappointed when it's not even as good in the Marvel version. But coming off of that, I know we will stay 10 feet away from any outside internet thoughts or controversy. We have no interest in discussing that on this channel. We're just here to kind of discuss the properties as they are. Moving into March 8th of 2019, we had Captain Marvel. I am very interested to hear, Slothro, have you actually seen Captain Marvel, or was that one you haven't seen?
This is one I have not seen. I have probably seen the last 5 minutes of this movie, I think, if I can remember off the top of my head. But All I really remember, honestly, is the trailer of this movie. I did not really get to see any of the actual movie itself. So you're definitely going to be more carrying on our discussion on this one.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I went and saw this opening weekend. I actually wasn't super aware of the messy online stuff that was happening at the time. So I went into it just with, curious to see what the next Marvel movie was. And, I thought it was fine. I mean, it wasn't as disappointing for me as Ant-Man and the Wasp. It definitely did feel, though, kind of like a movie that would have been in phase 1 or even early phase 2 of Marvel. It just didn't feel like it quite had the same, I don't know if polish is the right word, or memorability, or yeah, just it didn't feel like it had packed the same punch that a lot of the movies in phase 3 had. I mean, we have some really heavy hitters here. So, I mean, maybe that's an unfair comparison too, because it's coming at the end of after Infinity War, after Black Panther, after Thor Ragnarok, all these movies people really enjoyed. It's hard to then have kind of a phase 1 feeling Marvel movie come after those. But I thought it was fine enough. I really liked Nick Fury's role in this movie. I liked his dynamic with Captain Marvel. Yeah, it was fine enough. I think it suffers again from another forgettable villain. I know he was played by Jude Law, but I don't really remember much else about what his purpose was. I think that's one of Marvel's greatest weaknesses. They really struggled to write good villains. I mean, Thanos and Killmonger are the kind of exception, but Captain Marvel definitely suffered from that. But yeah, it was fine enough. Not as disappointing as Ant-Man and the Wasp. But yeah, that's, pretty lukewarm thoughts on Captain Marvel here.
I think the best thoughts, or like the best parts I saw of Captain Marvel, honestly, I think it did pretty good on the visual side of things. But at this point in phase 3, like most of the movies were doing really well in terms of visuals. So
yeah, that's a good point. The visuals were good. Yeah, they were well done. But yeah, I mean, you're right. At this point, it's kind of like the bare minimum with Marvel, what people expect. So we then went out of Captain Marvel into one of the biggest cultural phenomenons of all time, Avengers Endgame. All right, Salathro, thoughts on this juggernaut?
So leading up to this, for me, it felt like dead air. Like, it would just felt like a quiet room. So, like, you watched all of Infinity War, it's just, the screen turns black, it's all silence, and then this movie starts. And for me, this movie was very, very interesting. I'm pretty sure this is probably one of the first 3-hour movies I ever watched in my life. But after watching Infinity War and knowing what this was leading into, I was very interested to see what answers would come to a lot of those questions we had at the end of Infinity War. And I think right off the bat, seeing Thor just completely wipe Thanos after what he's done with the snap is kind of like jarring at first, because it was such a big moment leading up to that in the last movie that they didn't achieve it, and then right at the beginning of this movie, it's like within the first 5 or 10 minutes of the movie it happens, but it's by then it's already too late. And so the beginning of this movie is filled with a lot of trying to figure out, okay, well, what the heck do we do? It's like months or years have passed by after this. I think, was it 2 years that passed after the blip? I think is what they call it, or was it like a few months?
I think it's 5 years. Yeah.
Okay. So 5 years after this, it does like a little time jump, and that's when all the Avengers start to slowly come back together and realize that they're able to change, I guess, the timeline in a way by being able to affect the Infinity Stones and being able to affect Thanos in the past. And so you get to watch a lot of this movie as characters go back in time, fight against past Thanos, and try to actually save characters that you actually see either die or you don't know their whereabouts in Avengers Infinity War. I think one of the biggest ones that I think of is, oh my goodness, is it Cortana? No, not Cortana. What's her name? In the Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know why I'm forgetting her name.
Gamora,
that's what it was. Gamora comes back in this movie, but not the same Gamora that we initially saw coming through all of these phases. And so there's lots of interesting beats, which leads up to, of course, the big part, which is, I would say, the last 45 minutes to hour of the movie, which is just an all-out brawl. Like, every Avenger you've seen up to this point, every, side, even most of the side characters you can think of show up, and they just fight against Thanos in this all-out brawl. And just to see, it just was stunning to see such visuals on screen because it wasn't like a lot of anything you'd ever really seen on that scale before done that well with a story that engaging. And so it kept like everyone on the edge of their toes the whole time. And so it made like the ending like you did not know what was going to happen. And so by the time Iron Man does the snap, it's just a really interesting moment of thinking, oh crap, what's going to happen next? And then I feel like the end of the movie overall, even with the sad passing of Iron Man in that movie, I think it does a great job of tying all of those initial stories from phase 1 and 2 into this, a lot of them into a pretty good conclusion, and kind of leaving space for what could possibly come next in the future. This movie, I feel like, does a very good job of giving you an initial send-off of past phases and a possible glimpse into the future ones.
Yeah, it like Slothro said, the theater experience for this film. I remember I went and bought my tickets as soon as they came available. I had to go in person, purchase tickets, and we got there early. That was back in the day. I mean, at my theater back in the day, you you didn't have assigned seats. So we were there early with a bunch of other people waiting in line so we could get the seats that we wanted. And it was like a sporting event in that theater. And nobody minded at all the cheers when Captain America, of course, wields Thor's hammer. And just the cheers with the Avengers assemble as they've all come back and the snap's been undone and they all come to fight. It was just everybody in the theater. There were people on their feet and cheers and screams, and everybody was just so excited. It was electric. That's the only word I can think to use. Electric. I hope I get to experience that someday again because it was unmatched experience. It's
one of the few movies that has brought that brings that energy. It's just crazy what kind of energy that movie brought.
Oh yeah. I mean, Slothro, have you had anything like it since?
No. No, I feel like that was the last bit of that sauce, but it was such good Szechuan sauce, man. I was like, holy moly! I remember.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure you do too. Leaving the theater after watching that movie was just, you were just speechless. And
oh yeah.
I think I spent like the next week or two talking about that film easily. There was just so much you could talk about with it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was just riding high on the electric, joyful experience that it was. Oh man, it was incredible. Like Slothro said, I mean, you did have like the people that were snapped away return, but there are people who we permanently lose in Endgame. Obviously, the passing of Black Widow, the loss of Iron Man, and Gamora being sacrificed and that being unable to be reversed. It's devastating to see the effect that has on the Guardians. So yeah, there is a lot of undoable death in Endgame that felt very final. And I will say, I think finally by Endgame, I had a little bit of, I don't know, interest or like less disdain for the Iron Man character. I like that they humanized him a lot by giving him a daughter who he deeply cared for. That gave him a greater motive to fight when they come back to try and go and defeat Thanos. Yeah, I did have a lot more. And then of course he makes the ultimate sacrifice. So I think at Endgame finally I felt the redemption I'd been hoping they would do for the Iron Man character finally come through. But yeah, there was nothing like it. I think it's an incredible movie. I'm even speechless now because it's such a experience that's hard to put into words if you weren't there. But yeah, I really hope that, people in the next several decades get to have something like that again, because I mean, I still remember being just in awe at the Thanos character and how they had written him, how he was acted. I mean, Josh Brolin's acting as Thanos is just top notch. And there's this weird, like, understanding you have for him, even though his desired outcome is so dark and twisted, that you somehow still understand him, which I think makes him easily one of the best villains put to screen. But yeah, I think it was just great. And it was so awesome that a general audience got to access something that was just so incredible. Through cinema, it brought us all together. So yeah, I loved it.
Yes, and it's just crazy that wasn't the end of Phase 3, but the next one is the end of Phase 3. And the next movie, and the final movie we'll talk about for this phase, which is the final movie, is Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, for those who may not remember what this film is about, this film is the one that introduces Mysterio. So, in the comics, Mysterio is one of the main villains that fights Superman a lot, or Superman, fights Spider-Man a lot of the time, not Superman. Fights Spider-Man a lot. And I think for what they do in this movie, I was very surprised to see the way they took Mysterio, but I think the mind bendiness of it I thought was very intriguing. I don't know if it was my favorite overall, especially after Endgame, but I think for another Spider-Man movie, I think I had an adequate time with it. For me, it was like a B-tier Marvel movie, if I'm being honest. The visuals were interesting. I liked they tried to play a little bit of the PTSD of Spider-Man losing Iron Man. I thought that was interesting. And kind of seeing Iron Man leave things for Peter Parker. I thought that was a pretty cool part of the movie. But I think overall, it was just kind of like an okay movie.
Yeah, that's interesting because I actually differ a little bit on that in that I feel this was one of actually the stronger Marvel sequel movies for like a standalone character. As sad as it was to lose the Iron Man character, it did kind of force the pushing to the front and center Spider-Man in the sequel movie Far From Home versus say Homecoming. And like Slothro said, I did like the angle that they played of the loss of such a valuable mentor for Peter Parker. I thought that was great. I thought Mysterio was actually a pretty compelling villain. His betrayal angle and just his desire to really take down Spider-Man. And he reveals his secret identity at the end.
He essentially does. He essentially does by the end of the movie. He gets what he wants across. And so, yeah, it's crazy.
And I feel like them doing that, having the reveal of Peter Parker's identity, did signal to me that they were still serious about having movies after Endgame that they were still trying to carry on that heavy-hitting nature. And I did appreciate that because I felt like Ant-Man and the Wasp was kind of a disappointment and Guardians 2 was kind of a disappointment. So I actually thought this was a pretty strong sequel as far as Marvel goes and definitely a much, much more memorable villain. I actually remember what his goal was. And yeah, they bring Nick Fury in here so they still are able to tie him in and keep him going in the series. So yeah, I was actually much more enjoyed Spider-Man Far From Home than Spider-Man Homecoming. But nevertheless, my favorite Spider-Man movie in the MCU is definitely coming up. So I'm sure you can guess which one it is. But yeah, those were my thoughts on Far From Home. Did you have any others, Slothro?
Not in particular. Just if I had to choose between Ant-Man and the Wasp and Spider-Man Far From Home, I'd probably definitely watch Far From Home every time over that.
Yeah.
But yeah. This phase in general, this is probably the biggest phase by far of the whole Marvel franchise. So if there's any films like throughout all of the phases that you need to see, a lot of the films in this phase are the ones that I would assume most people would recommend and are honestly the best of its whole franchise, easily even up to this point. Just the absolute dynamics and cultural phenomena and just the stories are really interesting. It just felt like you were having a novel unfold visually before your eyes with a few of these movies, and so I would definitely say this is probably my favorite phase of the Marvel trilogy as a whole. But thank you guys for listening to our ramblings and our descriptions of all of these movies and kind of they're not only their significance for us, but I guess kind of going into what makes them what they are and how what makes them interesting and what makes them significant. So
it was. I think this is probably most people's favorite Marvel section. It's got all the big hitters that the general public or even deep in the weeds, if you will, Marvel fans have their favorites here. So yeah, I agree. I think this is the phase to watch if you want to know what the big hype about Marvel is. This is where you want to commit your time. But like we did last episode, Slothro, what is your favorite movie out of this phase?
Ooh, I don't know. I've seen some pretty hype edits of Avengers Endgame. That's really tough, but I would say for me, it's honestly probably a tie between Infinity War and Ragnarok, probably for me in this. I really liked Endgame, but there was just some sort of magic, I almost said magic whiz, but there's some sort of magic energy. I feel like Infinity War, it was just such a clean. It was like making a peanut butter and jelly. The spread of the butter and jam was so finely tuned on that movie that I'd probably have to say It's between Avengers Infinity War and Thor Ragnarok for me.
Nice. Yeah, those are some nice, great analogies there, Slothro. I would say for me, my two, because it's so hard to pick one. I think my two favorites are Endgame, the excitement, electricity feeling in the cinema for me. So probably Endgame, and then I would say, very, very close there is Black Panther. Yeah, that movie was so incredible. I just had a really great time with both of them. So yeah, those are my two favorites. But that is closing out probably the most popular and beloved phase of the MCU Phase 3. We really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day, like Slathra said, to listen to us talk about these Marvel movies. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. What is your thought about this phase? How would you rank these movies? Which ones are your favorite? Which ones were you not so much a fan of? But I am Postmortem Nightshade. You can find me at Postmortem Nightshade on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I mostly do movie review content. And Slothro, where can they find you?
I be playing games over on YouTube, so if you guys want to see some fun Slime Rancher videos or gameplay videos in general, definitely hop over. And also as well, if you guys ever get the chance, Postmortem Nightshade, my co-host over here, does some really, really good movie reviews, and she does them quite regularly, especially a lot of the movies that come out on a monthly basis. So definitely go over and check her videos out and her shorts and all of her medias out, because she does a really good job and puts in a lot of effort for these reviews.
Oh, well, thank you, Slothro. And in the same vein, check out Slothro's channel. I've plugged his Slime Rancher videos before. Those are always top tier for me. But he has also started doing some exploratory videos on games that are just in the demo phase. And those are also some of my new favorite videos from him. So check them out. They are very enjoyable. And we really appreciate you guys being here with us. Leave a comment, leave a like, please subscribe if you enjoy. But it has been so great joining you, and we will see you all next week. Bye!
Bye!